And now welcoming to our Newsmaker Hour, it'll be State Senator George Borrello. He's the state senator for Allegheny County and Chautauqua County and Cattaraugus County. Senator Borrello, thank you for calling in.
Great to be on the phone with you, Brian. How are you?
Doing well, and yourself?
We're hanging in there.
And one talk show host says that Governor Cuomo and other governors will keep delaying reopening things in New York State every 2 weeks and do this till election time. Do you think that's accurate?
Well, there's no question that I see political motivations out there, from a variety of folks when it comes to, this COVID-19 pandemic. However, I am certainly heartened by the governor's announcement yesterday. Myself and Assemblyman Andy Goodell put together a restart plan, that outlined how we could reopen the state safely and gradually, going region by region, using the economic development zones that we already have, the 10 economic development zones, and then industry by industry, starting with the lowest risk. So the lowest risk regions and the lowest risk in industries and businesses. And that was essentially what the governor outlined yesterday. Now, we submitted this plan to Michael Schmidt, the Commissioner of Tax and Finance, who is, basically the administrative end of the governor's economic restart team. We've been talking about it, on media outlets and social media. So I believe that has about 90% of what he discussed yesterday seems to mirror our plan. So I would hope that there would not be that political push to lock down the nation until November, because quite frankly, we can't do that. And I know the federal government certainly has no intention of doing that, but I'm hopeful that the politics can be set aside and we can actually get back to work, because the state of New York and many other states financially, would crumble if we kept ourselves on lockdown until November.
Agree with you there, Senator. The politics seem to be revolving around the blame game, pointing the finger at who knew when this was going to be bad and who didn't do enough first. But I think it would be pretty transparent if things were closed down and the economy continues to, stay at a standstill. It would be difficult to blame that on the president alone. With the COVID pandemic situation, do you go to Albany much, Senator George Borrello, or do you spend most of your time in the district?
Most of my time now is spent in the district. I'm at my office every day, and we're on the phones day and night trying to help people. I'm responding to messages, emails, and the big issue is, right now, of course, is constituent services, because so many people are having difficulties. But as far as Albany, we were there to vote on the budget at the beginning of April, and I don't know when we will be going back. There's some talk of potentially next week. I will tell you that it is my personal opinion that, as elected leaders, elected servants, really, is that we should be going to Albany safely, like we did when we were there for the budget, not putting anyone at risk. But I think that we have an obligation to get the people's work done, to serve our constituents, to serve the people of New York, not to do it in a haphazard way, but certainly taking all necessary precautions. But we need to move things forward, and the idea of doing it remotely, voting online and voting, on laws by online, I don't believe is appropriate. It does not give proper transparency. It does not give the proper opportunity for us to have the meaningful debate and discussion, and it, quite frankly, will create a lot more bad laws as a result. So I'm not in favor of doing things remotely when we should be there, taking risk, but taking risk in a calculated way to ensure safety and reducing that risk.
Talking with State Senator George Borrello. Senator Borrello, I see you posted on your Facebook, I believe this was yesterday, a statement about domestic violence and an increase in domestic violence in, would it be New York State that you're talking about?
Yes. Overall, there's been a spike. I spoke with Chautauqua County Sheriff Jim Quattrone a couple of days ago, where he outlined that since April 1st, you have a 75% increase in domestic violence calls in Chautauqua County, and that seems to be the trend, that's being seen by other sheriffs across the state. So, people want to argue that reopening our economy is strictly a financial concern, and they certainly some people feel that some people are being premature about this, and it's all based on money. But really, there are spikes not just in domestic violence. We're also seeing a more than doubling of mental health issues. In other words, emergency calls related to mental health issues. We've seen a spike in drug overdoses since April 1st. So in that short period of time, people are, their lives are at risk because of this shutdown. So this has a human health, a public health impact as well as a financial impact.
We spoke with former State Senator Kathy Young just over a week ago about her Cornell job and how she's helping farmers in this situation. Guessing that farmers are just one of the groups that you're hearing from in this tough economic situation because of COVID-19.
Yeah, the agriculture industry is certainly suffering. When you have restaurants and schools shut down, in New York State, for example, the dairy industry, about 50% of it is based on those institutional purchases from schools and restaurants and other institutions that are currently shuttered at the moment. And the restaurant industry certainly is doing takeout, but when you look at the total volume without having sit down, and so many restaurants that can't survive just on takeout, that right there, just dairy alone, which is already struggling before, is really in a striking difficulty at this moment. And I will say also that you hear stories of farmers dumping their milk because they're being told to. At the same time, there are shortages of dairy products in our stores. So there's certainly a disconnect there. It's something that I've spoken to the Farm Bureau about. I've spoken with our federal representatives about. And there needs to be some kind of a connection. The governor did speak about this in one of his briefings recently, that maybe New York State could buy some products. But whatever it is, we need to have a plan. But the plan needs to include gradually and safely reopening our economy. That's the only solution. Taxpayer subsidies can only last so long, and that's really what we're facing now. Is that you cannot keep an economy as large as the United States and the state of New York shut down long-term without permanent long-term damage.
Governor Andrew Cuomo says parts of upstate New York could be open by May 15th. Do you think Allegheny County could be included in that, a May 15th deadline?
Well, and I think every county and the county leadership is going to have to assess this individually. I know in Chautauqua County, County Executive P.J. Wendell issued a statement to businesses to start following the CDC and OSHA guidelines to create their own restart plan, which is also part of what the plan that myself and Assemblyman Goodell put forward. I think Allegheny County certainly has a lot at stake when it comes to manufacturing and also tourism with the summer coming. So there's no doubt that we should be able to look at these situations individually, region by region, county by county, and business by business. Those that have the most personal contact, of course, are going to be in later phases as we have a better handle on what we can do to ensure people's safety. But when you look at something like manufacturing, and you already have people doing social distancing. Okay, you already got you don't have welders sitting shoulder to shoulder. They're already being separated. Now the question is, how do you get the rest of your common areas and other areas where people interact, whether it's a lunchroom or a bathroom? How do you safely protect those employees? And so, in my opinion, those plans need to be done by the individual businesses, again, following the guidelines that both the CDC and OSHA have put forward regarding COVID-19. And that's how businesses get back to work, not just in Allegheny and Chautauqua, but in all counties in upstate. I think we need to, again, safely and carefully get back to work, which is what the plan that we put forward about 2 weeks ago with the states.
I have a question here, and I was talking to a friend of mine over the weekend about this, and he said the problem that places like Allegheny County are going to have, Allegheny County has not had a lot of COVID-19. If you look at the numbers compared to Steuben County, Steuben County's had a lot more COVID-19, the Hornell area in Steuben County especially. With Hornell being so near to the Allegheny County border, when Governor Cuomo and the team he has deciding on what area to open up, Could that throw a monkey wrench into the thing for Allegheny County because Steuben County and Hornell, which has had so much COVID-19, is near Allegheny County? The governor's heard the word Hornell a lot in his press conferences. Could that make things difficult for Allegheny County to reopen?
Well, again, I think you have to look at this industry by industry and business by business. There are going to be those situations throughout the state. Where do you draw the line? But that's why our plan called for a region-by-region breakdown. We have Western New York region that Kathy Hochul has been put in charge of by the governor. You've got the former lieutenant governor that's in charge of the Finger Lakes region, and Bob Duffy. And so those are, looking at that as a regional approach is first step. Second step is deciding the low-risk businesses. So when you say Allegheny County is close to Steuben County, that's true. But I don't foresee anybody in Steuben County wanting to drive over to, say, a manufacturing plant in Allegheny County to watch people go to work.
Right. I was thinking more in terms of shopping, and I'm not trying to be the one that throws the monkey wrench into it. I was just thinking, thinking ahead and in terms of what will be open and whatnot. But if you're talking manufacturing, that's a different thing.
Well, also, but let me say this also, regardless of the business, okay? We're not going to go back. We're not flipping a switch and going back to doing business the way we did before. That's clear. We are still going to practice social distancing. We're still going to have very careful sanitizing and if you're going to a grocery store, you're already interacting with people. And so if you look at a restaurant, for a restaurant to say reopen at 50% capacity, okay, with limited hours, keeping people, separated, having people wear, the PPE that they feel will be necessary to keep everyone safe. How is that any different than walking into a grocery store right now and, walking down an aisle, where you are, coming close to people, and the purpose of the masks is for people who can't remain more than 6 feet apart. So we have to look at this from a practical standpoint. We are already allowing people to go to Walmart and Home Depot and big box stores and grocery stores. Who's suffering are small businesses, and that's really not fair, in my opinion. I mean, why can a greenhouse not be open for business when Home Depot can be selling the same, gardening equipment and shrubs and all that? So, and this is due to the kind of the haphazard nature of the governor's, executive orders, and the fact that they're, because of the, trying to have an abundance of caution, they're also not honestly well thought out. And so you have situations like that, and that's when we need to start addressing. If we're going to allow people, to go into grocery stores and into Walmart and big box stores, when does small business get that same opportunity?
Okay. We're talking with State Senator George Borrello. Going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Selecting a nursing home for a loved one isn't easy until you've discovered Hornell Gardens Nursing and Rehabilitation. Hornell Gardens delivers the highest level of care, compassion, and commitment with amenities and activities that will enrich body, mind, and spirit. It's a place that's close to home. Stop in for a tour of Hornell Gardens, located at 434 Monroe Avenue in Hornell, or to learn more, call 585-222-CARE or visit hurlbutcare.com.
With some recent revisions, our certificate sale is still going on. Save up to 50% off your favorite restaurant or local business. Pay online and we'll ship the certificates to you at no extra charge. Go to WLEA.net and click on Certificate Auction Sales. Buy the certificates you want and request that they be shipped. Let us help you save money. And thanks for listening to AM 1480 WLEA.
Back with State Senator George Borrello. Senator, was wondering where we stand as far as the state's primary scheduled date goes. The governor had wanted to put a bunch of voting days together, primaries for local offices across the state and the presidential primary for the Democrats in the Buffalo area election to replace Congressman Chris Collins. I guess the latest there from City and State and EmpireReportNewYork.com is that the governor is canceling some New York City elections, and it's unclear what he's going to do with the Chris Collins voting day up in Buffalo. And wondering, do you have any thoughts on that, and do you have any inside information as to what's the latest there?
Well, I don't know if I have the inside information. Certainly, it appears that obviously we're going to have primaries that were supposed to be elections, special elections in April now move to the June primary date. The June primary date seems to still be there for at least for certain races. There's now talk of moving the congressional race to November, which would then kind of eliminate the special election. But the big topic of discussion is how do people vote? And that's really my concern. At first, they were talking about mailing ballots to every registered voter. And then they quickly found out that not only would that be just an absolute, fertile ground for voter fraud, it was also unconstitutional. So now they're talking about mailing everybody a absentee ballot application. And I certainly believe that those folks that are not comfortable going to the polls should be able to have the opportunity to get an absentee ballot. But I disagree that we should be allowing ballot harvesting, which will occur, where you have people showing up at people's houses, to gather their ballots. I just think there's just too much opportunity. People say, well, voter fraud is minor. It's, well, that's really not true, first and foremost. I mean, in the 2016 election, you saw some things in California where they did voter by mail, Southern California, Orange County, where you saw, they confirmed a couple dozen or more places where there was people registered to Starbucks and other places that was as their home address. And that's only going to increase if you do that in a state like New York. Then on top of that, you're going to influence people unduly. You're going to, and I just think that there is, especially in rural upstate New York, fraud is a major issue because we have so many elections that turn on a handful of votes. I mean, sometimes as little as one vote. So we can't afford to have any voter fraud. And then you look at the fact that the kind of the extreme Albany liberals are saying we don't want to have any signature verification. So we're going to send somebody a ballot, not confirmed, no ID has to be shown, not even a signature on the ballot, and we're going to submit that ballot. That is a severe threat to our constitutional democracy and to the security of our voting. And there are people out there that want this because they know fraud is the only way they're going to win certain elections.
I see on Empire Report, NewYork.com, Senator Borrello, that there's an article by Jimmy Vielkind saying Bernie-crats, the Bernie Sanders Democrats, argue against canceling the June primary. And that links to an article with the Wall Street Journal saying just that. Did you have any thoughts on that issue, Senator?
Well, again, the primary at this moment in New York State, we all want to understand and know, the delegates that'll be assigned, and I'm certain that there are people, the folks that are Bernie Sanders folks that want to have as many delegates for that convention as possible, so that they can influence, ultimately Joe Biden's agenda and platform. So I understand that that's the reason why, but again, we need to be safe about this. And if there's a safe way to go about it, I think it's got to be done without increasing the risk of fraud. And especially now, when at this point it's clear that Biden appears to be the only one left in the race. So if you're doing this and putting people at risk for political reasons, that's something that needs to be taken into account.
Talking with State Senator George Borrello. See on Spectrum's news website, NewYorkStateOfPolitics.com, they have an article that says COVID-19 pandemic will lead to billions in state spending cuts. A financial plan released Saturday by the Budget Division includes $8.2 billion with a B in likely cuts that would need to be made next month. Details of those cuts will be spelled out to the legislature, but are expected to affect schools, local governments, healthcare, and nonprofits. Now, NYSUT, the state teachers union, put out a statement, I believe sometime last week, saying, please don't cut education. It looks like, though, according to this article in the New York State of Politics.com, that could happen, Senator.
Well, first of all, anything is on the table at this point. And as I've said, kind of tongue-in-cheek, the budget that we passed is basically written on an Etch-a-Sketch, and the governor and Robert Mojica, his budget director, are the ones who can shake the Etch-a-Sketch and start over again, because he, with the laws that were passed, which I voted against, giving the governor absolute ultimate authority individually, that's what will occur. So the legislature will be shut out of this because the governor was given that authority by those that voted for it. And ultimately, they will be able to make those cuts. But, and I understand that we are in unprecedented times here, and cuts have to be made. However, with that being said, we passed a budget that included some ridiculous pork barrel money. First and foremost, a lot of special interest stuff. $100 million to fund public political campaigns. The taxpayers paying for political campaigns to the tune of $100 million. Didn't remove any of the money from last year's budget for like free college tuition for illegal immigrants, $27 to $30 million this year. That was not cut from the budget. So there's still those ridiculous, projects. And you might say, look, I want to see illegal immigrants get college tuition. I want to see public funding of campaigns. But we don't have the money to do those things right now. We also are still spending billions of dollars on these boondoggle green energy projects, $500 million to give tax incentives to Hollywood to film movies in New York State. So when you start talking about cutting education and we're not cutting those things, that to me is just egregious.
Now, everyone from Governor Andrew Cuomo to Congressman Tom Reed have come out against what U.S. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said last week about states possibly choosing bankruptcy as an option. Did you want to weigh in on that, Senator George Borrello?
Well, I'm not in the federal level, and those discussions will be had. And Mitch McConnell is doing what he's doing to represent his state of Kentucky, and I just in my opinion, I don't think we want to have this kind of divisive, venomous political talk right now. We have a real crisis on our hands that is going to take everyone working together, all hands on deck, so we can solve this. So I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat, liberal or conservative, downstate or upstate. We need to work together on this because the survival for all of us depends on it.
I also see on Spectrum News this morning, we touched on this topic of unemployment a little bit earlier, and in terms of constituent services, it says unemployment benefits reach $3.1 billion in New York State. And, that's something that Assemblyman Palmisano and Senator O'Mara talked about on this show recently, is how all the work they've been doing to help those who are having problems getting through to the Labor Department. Are you hearing a little bit less of that since the Department of Labor hired those, 3,100 new workers to help fill out applications for unemployment, Senator Borrello?
We've actually, we saw a little bit of I don't want to call it a lull because the phone, never stops ringing in my office for a variety of issues. But number one is unemployment insurance. Even though that they've increased the number of people, and I know that they're working around the clock, people are still having difficulty. They're not getting answers. I think that the Department of Labor was handed this unbelievable task when the governor shut the economy down all at once, and basically created an unemployment situation that eclipses the worst of the Great Depression all on one day, and that is a task that they are doing the best that they can to try to address. But ultimately, this is why going back to work, getting our economy restarted needs to happen, because there is just no way for us to properly handle those things at the state level. I wish that there were. I wish that we could get these people their unemployment checks as quickly as possible, and they will get them, and they will get them back to the date that they filed originally. But the stress on people, on the families, the people that I hear from that cannot put food on the table, that don't have money for these things, that's the impact that we have to understand. That if someone has to wait a month without income, there are many people who can't survive that long, and you already are seeing shortages at food pantries and things like that. Restarting our economy carefully and safely has to be the number one priority, because trying to the human tragedy of things like that is going to be far worse than the impact we feel from COVID-19.
With that, we have to leave it. State Senator George Borrello, I want to thank you so much for joining us live this morning here on Newsmaker.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
And we have Hornell Mayor John Buckley coming up next. Stay with us.